Oki. Itamikoko. Good evening. It is coming on midnight of Thursday, the 13th of March, 2025, in the middle of the lunar cycle Pitaki, some the eagle moon, which this year, because of the interjection of a Samitsuki, some or deceptive moon, just prior, the eagle moon this year is going to be our 6th of 7 winter cycles. So we're almost done with the winter, just as I'm almost done with this particular security detail, or so it would seem. This grocery store has been, stocking and getting itself finished with workers here every day, and always there's changes here when I come in, and I believe it's almost ready to open. In fact, I would assume, given that they've got here a wall of Easter candy and stuff, that they're going to open in plenty of time to sell Easter goods, right? So that should be coming right up. It's not this particular full moon, but the next one, so it's 4 weeks away or what have you. They'll definitely be open before that, so I'll be moving on to some other night detail elsewhere. I think I'm going to a potato farm next, if my supervisor is going to follow through with his plans he's told me about. But in any case, I've enjoyed being here at nights, and I've been getting 12 hours of reading time. Not always 12 hours of it, I don't use the whole time for that, but I've been getting lots of reading time. And so this evening I thought, let's do another book review, because I just wrapped this novel earlier in the shift here. It took me 4 shifts, well, 3 and a little bit, to finish this novel. And let's just get into it. It's called The Bones Beneath My Skin. It's by TJ Klune. I now respect that TJ Klune is a fairly prolific fiction writer, novelist. I haven't read any of his other books. I didn't know anything about him. I walked into my public library with a book that I didn't like and returned that and went straight to their new fiction to see what was there. And I thought, if there's anything half interesting in the new fiction, I'm going to check that out. So I started picking up titles and looking in the dust jackets, reading the little summaries and such, and this one caught my eye. It caught my eye primarily because of the setting. So what happens is, and what it explains on the dust jacket, at least in the short summary, is that you have this character Nate, who's a reporter in Washington D.C., but he loses his parents. His parents die. His brother doesn't want anything to do with him, and then he loses his job. But he has this cabin back home where he grew up in Oregon, in the Cascade Mountains, that he's inherited, and so he decides to pick up and leave and kind of get a fresh start again, back in Oregon. And when he arrives there, he finds there's already a man occupying his cabin, and he's got a 10-year-old girl with him, and there's something special about this girl, but there's also something wrong, and there's nefarious forces closing in on this girl, and Nate needs to decide whether or not he wants to get involved in that or something. Something to that effect is what's in the dust jacket. That's what I went by. I didn't flip to the back of the dust jacket, or I would have read about the author himself, and could have read right there that TJ Klune, part of what his shtick is in fiction writing, what he's trying to do is he's trying to present accurate and positive portrayals of queer characters in fiction stories. And so I didn't know I was in for a big chunk, a big part of this book throughout is it's a gay love story that comes about in this book, between Nate and the guy that he encounters in his cabin, ultimately. Now, at first, that guy who he encounters, whose name is Alex, by the way, is pretty rough. The guy actually has him at gunpoint and is maybe going to kill him and stuff. And it's kind of the 10-year-old little girl who dissuades him from doing anything too crazy with Nate. But they definitely hold him hostage for a while, hey? And he makes attempts to get out of there, and eventually he succeeds. He's able to get in his truck and with his keys and roll out of there. And at that point, he has the option to leave, hey? And I should go back a little bit in the story, because I didn't say that because it's not on the dust jacket, but what you learn is that Nate has not been to this place since he was 18 years old or something. I think he's like 27 in the book, something like that. He hasn't been around home all that time because when he was 18, his father discovered him in the cabin with a gay lover. And his father basically kicked him out, disowned him because he's a fag. And his father's a bigoted asshole. But what his father never was, nobody knew anyway, was a violent person. He never struck out at anybody or anything like that, violently. However, Nate's parents are going through some kind of a breakup or something, and his dad goes over to the cabin one day and shoots his wife with a shotgun, kills her, and then blows his own brains out. So it's a murder-suicide, and that's how his parents die. That's the cabin he's left with, is the place where that happened, and even the truck that his dad used, that has the gun rack on the back, that he came over to the cabin with that day and did the deed. So, but the man that he encounters there is in his 40s, and he's very rough. He's soldierly. It's very clear he's some kind of tough guy, and he's very protective of the little girl, and he's going to be willing to kill Nate if anything goes at all sideways. And right now he's holding Nate hostage because he doesn't know if they're in trouble at this point. And Nate, being held hostage, has time to kind of pay attention to what's going on. He notices the guy is gunshot to his gut. He notices the little girl, the 10-year-old. She's weird. She's weird. There's something different about her. She seems very intelligent and very thoughtful, but at the same time, she seems to lack some of the common experience that anybody in our society by the time they're 10 years old would have experienced. Like, for instance, she's never had bacon, and at one point she gets bacon, and from that point on, she needs bacon all the time because bacon is so fucking delicious. It's better than anything on earth, you know? So she's, and you'd think that she'd already had that experience. There's stuff that she, just things that she says. She uses a lot of like Western themed talking, because she's been reading Louis L'Amour books in the cabin, and she loves them, and she just loves the characters and that kind of the way that they talk in there. So she uses all that howdy and this and that, and But there's something about the way that she brings things up and she uses it that makes you that suggests like something's off with her. Something's off with her, but she's very smart and persuasive. She persuades, the big tough soldierly guy not to kill Nate and, this and that. But anyway, then like I said, at some point Nate escapes. He gets in his truck, he gets out of there, goes out to the road and makes a phone call back to one of his friends who's a reporter in Washington, D.C. He was a reporter, this big, news paper or something in Washington, D.C., but then he was a journalist, but then he got caught in this scandal where he was sucking some senator's dick or something like this, lost his job. So, and, tarnished his reputation professionally. So this is part of why he's in Oregon. He doesn't know if he's going to stay in Oregon. He's just there for kind of a fresh start. And so anyway, he notices there's weird things about the girl. He notices that the guy has got, he's got this wound. And then he's putting things together in his mind, trying to figure out what's going on with them. And he's made this call now to his friend. And he could have just kept going in his truck and got the fuck out of there. But for some reason or another, he turns around and goes back. And this is where I kind of lose my suspension of disbelief, in a way, with part of the story. Because he has opportunities. He's been, basically rough-handled and kept hostage. And he's been in fear, and there's nothing that should drive him to go back into that. He should get the hell out of there. He knows something's wrong, but he decides to turn around and go back once he's made his phone call instead of running. And it turns out though that his phone call triggers a big problem, because these two are hiding out from something nefarious force, and that force has such connections that as soon as this journalist friend of Nate starts looking into who is this guy and this girl, then they're onto it. They know that where they are, and so they start coming in. They start closing in on the cabin itself and stuff. I don't know if you call them bad guys, but anyway, the nefarious force. I don't want to give away too much of the story. Hey, basically, I don't want to give away the story, but the girl is very special, and this force is after her, and this guy that she's with is this macho, soldierly guy who's protecting her. And as I'm, reading these things, and you find out the girl has, powers, special powers and stuff. And as I'm reading this, I'm thinking these are very archetypal characters we have here. We have the victimized gay man who's whatever. He's very talky all through. He's like C-3PO. He doesn't shut up, And you got this soldierly guy, Alex, who just happens to have this, he'll kill no problem, but at the same time he's got this soft spot for this little girl. And that's something we've seen before. That reminds me, speaking Star Wars talk, that reminds me of The Mandalorian with the Baby Yoda thing. A lot of times we see this theme with the warrior that has a little vulnerable baby, basically, that he's tending to, and you can see he's got the softness in him. Hey, even though on the outside he's so gung-ho and stuff. And then, and then you got the little girl, and of course the little girl has to have magic powers because that's how girls are. They're into witchy stuff and all that. They like to have powers, special powers, that you wouldn't know because they do seem so vulnerable, but actually they got special powers. So I was looking at all these kind of like cliche character build, and then it started turning into a gay love story. Because as these three kind of fled, they end up fleeing the cabin and going on the run away from these nefarious forces that are after them. Nate, of course, the whole time is learning more and more and more about what the fuck's actually going on and what he's got himself involved in. But then, he starts making this connection, this gay love connection with Alex, the soldierly guy, and I didn't see it coming. Hey, my own gaydar didn't go off at all that might be where these two characters lead to into a love affair. Never seen it coming. We learn that Alex, the soldier guy, is actually bisexual. He's probably had a wife and child who've died. But he's also had gay lovers, and he gets gay on Nate, and Nate likes him and all of that, and so you have a love story that goes on. It's an unexpected love story to me, to happen. As far as how it was presented, I thought it was pretty cool because it didn't you don't come in, it's not heavy-handed that this is going to be any kind of queer story or queer fiction. In fact, this is labeled as science fiction by my library, and that's all I expected, and that's pretty much what was happening. But you're going to have a love story in the mix of it, and you might have that in any book, with a regular heterosexual couple or something, and it wouldn't be unexpected. And it hits me unexpected because I just didn't see in Alex and the soldier guy, he's so macho and stuff. I just didn't see it coming that he would be into guys and all of this, and it caught me off guard. But once the things started rolling, then the progression of it all made sense after that. The progression of their love story is a kind of a side story within this book. The author himself, there's a at the end there's kind of an epilogue where he talks about how he tried to publish this way back when he had a different publisher, and they thought this book was weird, and so they didn't really want it, so he took it and self-published it. Went through all the pains and stuff of self-publishing it, self-published it, and then now his new publisher that he works with supports him being weird and wanted to republish it, and this is how I get a hold of it. But anyway, the way that he intended it was as kind of an action film in a book form, right? And you definitely get some scenes in there that are actiony, that are big screen actiony potential. But I myself didn't think that this is going to be made into. I don't see this being made into a movie. I just don't. Okay, and the reasons for that is because while it was page turning enough to me, it was engrossing enough that I read the whole thing, and enjoyed it. It wasn't the kind of thing that I'm going to read again, or I'm going to buy a copy for my library, or necessarily recommend to anybody to read or anything like that. I kind of felt like the story, a lot of elements to the story were predictable and cliche and again, the kind of the archetypes that you deal with in the characters that are in there, even the bad guys and all of this, they're very archetypal type characters. They don't have a lot of depth to them, in my own rendering, my own reading of it. And I don't know, I found it an enjoyable, read, but didn't blow my hair back. If I had to do the rating thing, I'd give it a thumbs up. But on the stars, I might give it a 3 out of 5. It's a readable book. It's a readable story, and it is, it's got a pretty decent clip to it, although at times it does drag, and to me there's just elements of the story that I've had a hard time believing, like why he kept going back into this dangerous situation. He didn't feel like he had the right motivation to compel him to do that. And similarly, I wasn't expecting Alex, the soldier guy, to become this kind of softer gay lover that he becomes as the story progresses. And so I don't know, there's just aspects of it that I found not believable, but you just go with the story because it's going. And a lot of the stuff that I'm not talking about, aspects of the story, and why this little girl was special and all of this stuff. Like there was one little twist to the story that I kind of didn't expect to happen. But when it happened, it wasn't like, wow, it was more like, oh yeah, that makes sense. That's kind of a cool way to do this, right? But outside of that, I could see things coming, a mile away. And the scenes that are meant to be tense they don't feel tense enough for me. I don't know. I don't know. So it's kind of a mediocre review, I think, like as far as my opinion of the book. But it is a readable book. And I think if you're into queer fiction, you might really like it. You might really be down for it. That part I didn't know I was in for. It just kind of caught me off guard, but I didn't take it in any kind of way. It just seemed like a regular love story to me, except that one of the lovers was not believable to me, So that's my kind of review of it. There's a lot that I didn't say, just so that it's stuff that you can discover while you read it. TJ Klune. I may check out another of his books sometime. He's definitely a decent writer. I don't know how his other stories are, but this one I thought was all right. That's about it. Again,